All right, I think we'll get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Robert Vodnoy, and I am a member of the Sarasota Music Archive Board of Directors and the music director of the Chamber Orchestra of Sarasota. And I'm delighted to have you all here today to listen to my lecture. Hi, Joy.
Hi, Robert.
How are you? Listen to my talk on forbidden music, which is a long, complicated story. I want to thank the Music Archive for arranging this and all the other lectures on our program. And there's a flyer out on the table if you want to know what the other dates are. Some of you have already got them. And are you ready to do that drawing here? Oh, okay. So at the end of this lecture, those of you all signed up, if you want to get on our mailing list, we're going to have a drawing for a free ticket, pair of free tickets for a concert that is actually associated with this lecture. All right. All right. So this topic is called Forbidden Music, and since this is a library, I will say that part of my research was based on two books by Michael Haas called Forbidden Music and Composers in Exile. So in 1991, record producer Michael Haas recommended that the Decca Record Company bring back the music that was banned by the Nazis. The series was titled Entartete Musik, and in all, Decca produced 31 music albums. So to tell this story, we have to, we're all set with there. I'm sorry?
No, can we dim those lights so we can...
They are dim. If we dim them more, we can't see. And really do it well, so
you want to try dimming them a little more, and I will try with that.
Do you have any more of the handouts?
Yeah, you want to try off, and then can you still see me?
Yeah.
okay.
All right. Yeah, that's perfect. All right. Okay. Fortunately, I bought it. Yeah. All right. There we go. All right. So, I'm going to start this actually with a little bit of a personal story, and we need slide number 2. So in the 1990s, I guest conducted the Czech National Symphony in Prague in a concert at the famous Rudolf Fiedler concert hall. You can imagine my thrill at conducting in the hall.
Can you speak into the mic, please? Thank you.
All right, how's that? So that's. We'll turn them on partway through. Okay. All right. Anyway, we're trying to videotape this, so. All right, we'll turn the lights on. Okay.
No, don't turn them on. No.
All right. Boy. Tough crowd. All right. So you can imagine my delight conducting this auditorium. They're going to You didn't get that name, Joy, by accident, right? All right. So you can imagine my thrill at conducting in the hall. The hall is called the Dvorak Hall, and in the conductor's dressing room, there were pictures on the wall of Arthur Nikic and Dvorak and Smetana, and many, many great conductors who conducted in the time. So the orchestra leaders told me a story which appeared in Jiří Weil's novel by the title Mendelssohn on the Roof. Weil was a Jewish Czech writer and a Holocaust survivor. And here's the story. Julius Schlesinger, an aspiring SS officer, had received orders from the infamous SS officer Reinhard Heydrich to remove a statue of the Jewish composer Felix Mendelssohn from the roof of Prague's Great Concert Hall. Schlesinger, who was Czech but not Jewish, was eager to please, but he was nervous because he was dealing with the SS that he would make a mistake. So which of the statues on the roof is the Jew? They were unlabeled. Remembering his course on racial science, he measures the noses. Schlesinger instructs his men to pull down the statue with the biggest nose. Only as the statue begins to topple is it recognized that it's not Mendelssohn's statue at all. In fact, it was Richard Wagner, Hitler's favorite. So you'll see that the sort of Karl Wagner term, the leitmotif of this talk, has to do with Mendelssohn and Wagner and the banding. All right, so slide number 3. So this is a timeline which shows what happened with Jewish emancipation and assimilation in Europe. Many Jews in Europe followed the path of emancipation and assimilation beginning around the beginning of the 19th century. The forerunner of the Enlightenment in Jewish history is called Haskalah, which means education. And this discipline or philosophy permitted intermarriage and attempted to reconcile the conflicts between Jewish law and secular life. In other words, how can you be Jewish and eat bacon? The timeline shows you, for example, that 1789 was the Declaration of the Rights of Man. 1806, Napoleon conquered Europe and emancipated Jews across the entire French Empire. Between 1812 and 1870, Prussia and then various German states followed suit and emancipated the Jews. In 1850 and again in 1869, Wagner published his infamous anti-Semitic essay, Jewishness in Music, in which he attacked both Mendelssohn and Meyerbeer and criticized the influence of Jews on art music. And in 1871, under Bismarck, the Jews were emancipated through the German Empire, or the Second Reich. Slide 4. Okay, so our story really starts with Moses. Moses Mendelssohn. He was a philosopher of the Enlightenment and the first Jew to bring secular culture to those living in Orthodox Jewish life. He valued reason and felt that anyone could arrive logically at religious truths. He was the first Jew to translate the Hebrew Bible into German. And let's see, on this one side on the left, you see it says, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashemayim ve'et haaretz, which is the first line of Genesis. And on the right, you see it says, Am Anfang schuf Gott die Himmel und die Erde. So what Mendelssohn did was he translated the Hebrew words into German, Hochdeutsch, but he wrote them in Hebrew characters so that it meant that Jews could read German and with the text that they understood, right? Mendelssohn's son, he had 5 children. Amongst them were Joseph and Abraham, who both became bankers. Next slide. All right, so Felix Mendelssohn was a composer, pianist, organist, conductor, and educator. His father, as I said, was Abraham the banker. His mother was the granddaughter of Daniel Hitzig, who was the court Jew to Frederick the Great. His sister, who's pictured in the second slide, picture over, was Fanny Mendelssohn, who was also a talented musician. Mendelssohn was recognized as a child prodigy and compared to Mozart. His father raised the family with no religion, and when Mendelssohn was in his early teens, the father converted the family to Lutheranism and changed the name to Bartholomew. Mendelssohn never liked that, and used to, in fact, sign his letters to his sister, Mendelssohn non Bartholomew. In 1821, at the age of 12, Mendelssohn met with Goethe, the great Enlightenment philosopher, numerous times. In 1829, he conducted a revival of the Bach's St. Matthew Passion, which he conducted in Leipzig. Mendelssohn commented that it was amazing that it took the son of a Jew and an actor to bring back the greatest work of Christian music literature. He was equally successful as a conductor and founder of the Leipzig Conservatory. He's basically the 19th century equivalent of Leonard Bernstein. And his music, of course, was banned by the Nazis. Next slide. So there's tons of Mendelssohn I could have chosen, but I chose this piece, Die erste Waldbrücke Nacht. It's based on a poem by Goethe. Goethe wrote the poem intending it to be set to music, and Mendelssohn's teacher, Zeltner, tried twice and failed. Mendelssohn was attracted to the poem because of the ghosts and goblins scene, which reminded him of Midsummer Night's Dream. So the story of this dramatic oratorio is that Druids and local heathen want to celebrate May Day, but that's now forbidden by occupying Christians. A comic solution emerges as a Druid watchman suggests a masquerade of the devils, spirits, and demons at the base of the mountain to frighten the superstitious occupiers. The Christians are scared away, and the Druids are left to celebrate spring in the sun. The oratorio ends with a prayer to an invisible God. So it's really an enlightenment kind of prayer. And the text says, and even if they rob us of our ancient ritual, who can take your light from us? Here we go. Slide 7. So the first wave of Jewish composers after emancipation in both France and German-speaking lands includes so many composers, it's almost impossible to list all of them, unless I'm going to do a 5-part lecture. But I picked 3. From left to right, that's Adolf Marx, who was a German theorist and critic and pedagogue, one of the most influential music theorists of the 19th century and the Beethoven expert. Jacques Fromentel Olivet, French composer, teacher, and writer. His father was a cantor. His opera, La Juive, or The Jewess, was actually a favorite of Wagner's. His daughter married Georges Bizet, the composer of Parma. And then the third guy over there is Ferdinand Hiller, German conductor, composer, and teacher. He accompanied Hummel to Vienna to visit Beethoven on his deathbed. Next slide. So now let's bring us to Giacomo Meyerbeer, German composer. He was the most frequently performed opera composer during the 19th century. He's the link between Mozart and Wagner. Meyerbeer descended from a distinguished and wealthy family from Berlin. His father was an industrialist and a contractor to the Prussian army. His mother was the daughter of a banker and a famous sommelier. So he had the not only the musical talent, but also the wherewithal to do what he wanted. Sometimes he proposed an opera to the Paris Opera, and they said no, and he waited them out. He waited 7, 8, 9 years until they agreed to do the opera the way he wanted to do it. So, next slide. All right, so there were many operas that I could have chosen by Meyerbeer. In fact, there was another excerpt I really wanted to play for you, but I just didn't think it was going to get us all in an hour. So this is from Le Prophète. This is based on a story by Voltaire and the historical life of John Lydon. It was a grand opera composed in 1849. By the way, it's the first opera to include roller skating. Talk about grand opera. There's actually supposed to be an ice skating scene, but you can't ice skate on an opera set, inline roller skates. So the story in brief, Jean de Lille is an innkeeper who was persuaded by the Anabaptists to become the self-proclaimed king of Munster. At his coronation, Jean renounces his mother, Pete. After all, he's presented himself as a Messiah, and a Messiah couldn't have an earthly mother. The Anabaptists are attacked by Oberthal, who was the deposed king of Munster. Jean renounces his kingship, reconciles with his mother, and burns the castle to the ground. Joy, does every opera end with burning the castle to the ground?
Some do.
Many anyway. So this is the opera which enraged Wagner the most, and this is a little bit from the famous coronation scene where the action climaxes. Long excerpt. Nope. Oh dear. Gotta get to those. Back up. So maybe I lost the lip. Okay, you'll have to live without it. Next slide. I missed it. All right, forget it. Okay. All right, so our next slide is the timeline. There we go. So we're continuing our little timeline a little bit. So from emancipation, which begins at the beginning of the 19th century, to disenfranchisement takes about 115 years. 1815, the Congress of Vienna founds the German Federation. 1819, the Hep riots take place in Germany, resulting in the destruction of Jewish property. 69 to 71, the North German states who had not emancipated their Jews were forced to, and under Bismarck, emancipation was complete. And 60 years later, the Nazi Germany reverses the entire emancipation. So next slide. So this brings us to the two towering figures of the 19th century, Wagner and Brahms. Wagner was born in 1813 in Leipzig. His stepfather was a playwright actor named Ludwig Geyer, who instilled a love for music and theater in him. Wagner's ideas, of course, influenced music, drama, and German identity for generations of composers, writers, and political movements, notably the Nazis and Hitler. Johannes Brahms was born in 1833 in Hamburg, which was a free state at that time. He was the son of a bass player, a musician. He was deeply influenced by Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven, and his music was rooted in classical form of counterpunch. Important music history, the two main stages of music history in the early 20th century before minimalism are neoclassicism and modernism. Neoclassicism flows from Brahms, and modernism flows from Wagner. So around 1860, Brahms became known as Brahms the Jew, which was Brahms was Lutheran. But he was known as Brahms the Jew by the Wagnerian groupies because they speculated that Brahms was a respelling of his name, that his real name was Abraham's. Brahms had many Jewish friends, including the great violinist Joseph Joachim, who he defended. So Brahms, this is interesting for the problem we're working our way toward, which is Weimar. Because Brahms was both socially liberal and, by the standards of the day, musically conservative. Which in Vienna, at the end of the 19th century, if you were politically liberal, it meant you were musically conservative. And the city was really immersed in the struggle between the ascending political right and the waning left. Next slide. Okay, so I have to start out by saying, so I don't want you to think that I'm an anti-Wagner, right? That I love Wagner. Well, I love Wagner's music. I've conducted excerpts from all 11 of his mature operas, from Rienzi to Parsifal, and there's nothing more thrilling than standing on a podium with an orchestra playing Wagner. It's astonishing. But Wagner's anti-Semitism is embedded in the operas particularly in the Ring and Meistersinger and Parsifal. So I've chosen two examples here to show the problem. The first is from Die Meistersinger, which is a comedy. And in it, one of the main characters is named Beckmesser, and he's a merciless caricature of Edward Hanslick, who was the Jewish critic of the Neue Freie Press in Vienna. And Hans Sachs sings an aria at the end of the prize song, in which he extols the beautiful singing of Walter. And then he takes a sidetrack and goes into a diatribe, which actually some opera companies cut it, and other opera companies include it, but usually accompany it with a note in the program saying, yeah, we know it's there. So here it is. So that's, by the way, the great James Morris, who I heard him sing around 1970. He was practically making his debut as a Wagnerian singer, singing Vodnoy. So embedded in that text are like a bunch of dog whistles, foreign blood and foreign invasion. It's totally anachronistic because at the end of the 16th century, there were no foreign invaders coming into Germany. But Wagner could also crank out, something as gorgeous as Walter the Prize Song, which is next. Next video. Sorry. Yes. So where was Wagner's music performed? It was performed all over Europe, eventually, of course, all over the world. But Wagner, nearly unique in this, built a festival house for his operas to be produced. The Festspiel House at Bayreuth the cornerstone was laid in 1872, completed in 1876. It was where the very first Ring cycle, the 4 operas, which I believe Joy talked about last year, right?
Yes.
Yes. The hall seats only 1,950 people, which means it's more or less the size of our wonderful opera house. And Wagner built a private home on the grounds, and he's buried there. It's kind of like Mecca for Wagnerians. His wife, Cosima Liszt Wagner, Liszt, she was Liszt's daughter, took over the direction after Wagner's death. She retired in 1906. She was succeeded by Siegfried Wagner, that would be Wagner's son, and Siegfried died young, and his wife, Winifred Chamberlain Wagner, actually distantly related to Neville Chamberlain, took over. So Nazi Germany took over the festival during the war, and after the war it was denazified, but it's still a family business, and the current director at Bayreuth is Katharina Wagner, who is Wagner's great-granddaughter. So why did Hitler love Wagner? Wagner's music appealed to Hitler's megalomania. Wagner glorified Norse and Germanic heroic sagas, which was part of the narrative Hitler wanted to promulgate. And probably very importantly, Wagner's family was Hitler's surrogate family. Winifred Chamberlain Wagner actually sent Hitler the paper on which he wrote Mein Kampf when he was in jail. And her children called Hitler Uncle Wolf. Wagner's music was the soundtrack for the Third Reich. You can't underestimate that. It was played as the background music for war newsreels, and it's even played in airplanes on bombing runs. So when Hitler came to Weimar the first time in 1923, he visited the family, and they all joined the Nazi Party. Winifred maintained close contact with Nazis and Hitler all the way to the end of the war. And when Hitler came to power in 1933, they used to hold annual party conferences at Bayreuth. And Hitler, who was himself a failed artist, actually impacted Bayreuth programming, stage direction, and even did some of the set design. Next slide. Okay, so all of this is based on a phenomenon with the change in the nature of anti-Semitism at the end of the 19th century. So, at the core of this theory was that Jews were not part of a religious group, but they were a separate race. Anti-Semites believed Jews were dangerous and threatening because of their Jewish blood. And that was formulated in 1883 by the guy at the bottom there, who was John Galton, a British scientist and statistician and the father of eugenics. And eugenics was a worldwide, eugenics was just kind of false science. It was a worldwide phenomenon. But within Nazi cultural ideology, there are incompatible strands. One strand says that any modernist movement that the Nazi cultural arbiters found offensive, they called cultural Bolshevism. The other strand says that any works were deemed undesirable if they were written by people of a foreign race. So they fused that into one odd concoction in which only a foreign race could produce cultural Bolshevistic works of art. Next. So the bridge between the 19th and the 20th centuries is Gustav Mahler, another band composer, of course. Mahler said, "I am thrice homeless as a native of Bohemia and Austria among the Germans, and a Jew throughout the world, everywhere an intruder, never welcome." Mahler completed 9 symphonies and composed many song cycles, and today probably comes close to rivaling Beethoven as the most performed symphonist by American orchestras. So the earliest work that has survived of Mahler's is called Das Klagende Lied. And I picked this because he submitted this for the Beethoven Prize and was rejected by Brahms, which he took pretty badly. So it tells the story of a queen who will only marry a knight who can find a red flower. This is the Grimm fairy tale. The two brothers compete. The wicked brother kills the virtuous brother, wins the contest, but a minstrel finds the skeleton of the dead brother and fashions a flute out of one of the bones, brings the flute to the wedding, and when the flute is played, it accuses the wicked brother. Here we go again. The queen faints, the wedding party flees, and the castle burns to the ground. So Mahler is the bridge between Brahms and Zemlinsky and Schoenberg and Korngold, as we'll talk about when we get directly to the Weimar period. This is a really fabulous work. Here's just a little bit of it. That's all I can believe. Yeah, that's it. So this is the flute singing. This is a great Pierre Boulez conductor. Okay. So, next slide. Yes, here we go. So the connection between Schoenberg and Mahler is very tight. Of course, both of them were Jews. Schoenberg converted, Mahler converted to Christianity and then lost his faith. Schoenberg converted to Lutheranism and then converted back to Judaism in 1933 when the Nazis came to power. Schoenberg was self-taught, except that he studied with Alexander von Zemlinsky, who was his brother-in-law. Zemlinsky's first lover was Alma Mahler, who was Gustav Mahler's wife. The love affair was before Alma Mahler married Gustav. So Zemlinsky was supported by Brahms. I bring this up because it shows the tight interconnection between all these people. Mahler, of course, Schoenberg's music was denounced as degenerate. Mahler was a strong supporter of Schoenberg, both financially and in public. Mahler died, of course, before the rise of Nazism. Schoenberg immigrated to the U.S. in 1938. So, and this is the Schoenberg year, actually. Right, 1874, so this is the Schoenberg anniversary year. So, probably his most famous work is Pierre Lunaire, which was composed in 1912. It's a melodrama of 21 poems based on the French poet Albert Giraud's cycle, translated into German. And it's full of numerology. It was completed on March 12, 1912. There's 21 pieces in it, and the numerology goes on and on and on. So the main character is Pierrot, a famous Italian commedia dell'arte character, set by Schoenberg as the moonstruck and fantastical clown. And this is a really wonderful performance by an Israeli ensemble. This piece was written in 1912. Mahler died in 1911. So the journey that Schoenberg is making musically, when Mahler died, he just completed the Ninth Symphony a couple of years before that, incomplete 10th. So this is being written in a musical atmosphere. It's completely ahead of its time. It's actually an amazing piece. I used to hate it when I was a kid. Now I listen to it and I think, wow, what a masterpiece. Okay, so we're going to go back to the Weimar Republic. And yes, here we go. So the Weimar Republic dates from 1918 until 1933. It was the German government. The German government set it up after World War I. And the cultural windfall of the Weimar Republic, which of course is resting on what was going on before the beginning of the Weimar Republic, the legacy is both musical, visual, theatrical, and literary. Composers in the 1920s were quick to exploit music's privileged status and explore the social issues of the day. Weimar was a great experimental laboratory for music in which the popular and classical were intertwined. Music as diverse as Berg's Vodnoy and Kurt Weill's Three-Penny Opera come from this period. It's also important to know that American jazz was first being performed in Germany in the 1920s. After the Nazis seized power in Germany, the music and musicians who created it were systematically suppressed. So pictured from the top, you have, that's Walter Gropius's Bauhaus School of Architecture. This is the building of Dessau. It was their second building. Again, an interconnection because Walter Gropius married Alma Mahler, who, Gropius married Alma Mahler after, obviously after Gustav died. The second picture up there we're going to listen to some music from it is Schlemmer's Triadic Ballet from 1923. And down at the bottom, there is George Grosch's Eclipse of the Sun in the 1920s, and Otto Dix's Metropolis or Groschenstadt in 1928. Okay, so now we're going to have some music. The first one is, this is Schlemmer's Triadic Ballet. The music is by Paul Hindemith, and Schlemmer's idea was that dancers should be dancing in geometric shapes. That was a new piece for me when I was doing research for this talk. I found that terrific. The second example I want to play is from Alban Berg's Vodnoy of 1925, so right in the same period. And this will take a little bit of a setup. So Vodnoy, the opera is based on a play written by George Büchner almost 100 years earlier, and that's actually based on medical records from a trial of a man who was accused of murdering his mistress, and it's the first example of the insanity defense in German legal history. He lost the case. So Wozniak is a corporal in the army, and he is subject to medical experiments by a German doctor, ironic kind of anticipation of history. His mistress is Marie, and she's having an affair with a drum major, and he lapses into increasing hallucinations and murders her. So in this early scene in the opera, he's talking to his captain, he's shaking his head, and the captain lectures him that it's immoral that he has an illegitimate son. And this is Wozniak's response. Okay, so Baird was also a target of the degenerate music exhibit, which we'll get to in a minute. Okay, so we're up to slide 19. There we next slide. Right. So we're going to compare two composers here, another two Weimar era composers, Erich Korngold and Ernst Krenek. So Erich Korngold, this is a point which I'm going to mention, by the way. This talk is kind of a prelude to a concert that the Chamber Orchestra will do on March 20th. And when we have our drawing, the winner will get 2 free tickets to that concert. But this is a program which features a Florida premiere of a piece entitled Anne Frank's Tree, a work by Erich Korngold, and the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. All right, so Erich Korngold. So the Korngold is on the right side of the slide, the Krenek is on the left. Korngold's father was Julius Korngold. He was the principal critic of Vienna's prestigious Neue Freie Presse, which I mentioned earlier, the paper that Hanslick wrote for. He was the most influential music commentators writing in German, and a champion of Brahms and anti-Wagnerian. Erich was a Wunderkind. His ballet was written and premiered when he was only 11, huge success. His first opera, Die Tote Stadt, written in 1921, also a big success. He was considered a rival to Richard Strauss. And then his second opera, Das Wunder der Helene, The Miracle of Helene, was a failure, for reasons we'll talk about. After that, he turned to recomposing and rearranging. He principally focused on the music of Johann Strauss, or reworked his operettas, and then, of course, he had a major Hollywood career writing film scores for such movies as Seahawk and Adventures of Robin Hood. After 1933, his music was banned in Germany. Helene is a mystical opera which tells the story of a forbidden love affair between a despot's wife and a stranger who brings joy to people. This is Renee Fleming. Next slide. So the second opera that we're going to talk about from this period is by Ernst Krenek. He studied with Franz Schrecker, who we'll come to in a moment. He was briefly married to Anna Mahler. So Anna Mahler was Mahler and Alma and Gustav had two children. One daughter died in childhood, and Anna survived. She actually ended up having 5 marriages, so traumatic childhood. So he was an active composer-conductor prior to the big opera we're going to listen to, Johnny Spielt Auf, which he composed in 1926. This was considered a side opera. It was an immediate international success. It was performed all over the world. I think something like 700 performances in its first year. Then it ran into hostility from Nazi sympathizers. In Munich, I love this story, crowds unleashed cages of white mice in the theater and shouted "Black Shame." So it was condemned in the 1938 exhibit, which we're still working our way towards. After 1938, Krenek emigrated to the United States, where he taught in various universities, went through a variety of musical styles. Johnny Spielt Auf, which means Johnny Strikes Up, is a German language opera. It's about a black jazz violinist. It was played in blackface, is the original production, and a white German composer who compete for the future of popular music in Germany. And there's a subplot between the black violinist and the maid, in which he actually steals a violin. But it ends up with everybody in a happy ending at the North Pole. But the opera was phenomenally successful, and so Yevgen's been written at just about the same time as Wozzeck and Korngold. Next video. Oh wait, please stop. That's not correct. That's correct. Hope I didn't miss it. So no. 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 Okay. You'll have to wait for my next lecture to hear it. Too bad. Okay, so the critical response. The Nazis condemned Johnny because he said it was degenerate, even though Krenek was Catholic. The Nazis labeled Eliane as degenerate, even though it was conservative and very close to Wagner, really. So the tide had turned against Korngold's conservative style, and of course turned against him because he was Jewish. There were also noisy protests in the theater. Next slide. Yeah. All right, so in 1932-33, that's the watershed here. In 1932, Himmler's wedding laws banned intermarriage. The first Vichy government fell. Hitler gained German citizenship. Hindenburg was reelected narrowly against, Hindenburg was reelected narrowly against Hitler. In 33, this is an important anniversary for both Brahms and Wagner. Hitler dissolved the parliament after the Reichstag fire, and Goering banned communist gatherings. Goebbels became the Minister of Information. Next slide. All right, so here we are at the exhibit. So the musical period of the 20s is often characterized by progressive and modernity. In reality, it was a clash between nationalism and ideation of Das Volk on one side, and individuality and self-expression on the other. Composers' response were three kinds of responses. Either they left, like Schoenberg, Weill, or Hindenburg. They went into internal exile, where they simply stopped having their music performed. This is the Jewish composers who were non-Jewish composers. Or they died, either under the pressure or in a concentration camp. Hans Severus Ziegler is a painter who was appointed by the Senator of Fine Arts, and he organized 2 exhibits on degenerate music and art. it backfired because the exhibits were wildly popular in the country. All right, now I think we're ready for Schrecker. So slide 22. Okay, so we're going to compare these two composers. I'm going to make it. I need about 5 more minutes of your patience. I'm going to go a little bit. Okay, so Franz Schrecker, raised Christian. Ironically, his grandfather, Ignaz Schrecker, he was the court photographer, but he divorced his Jewish wife and married Eleanor von Klossmann, who was a member of Catholic aristocracy and converted to Catholicism. Schrecker was raised Protestant. He had an initial spectacular success. He was hailed as the successor to Wagner, and he started losing positions as early as 1932, the watershed year. His operas were canceled. He lost his teaching position. He died of a heart attack in 1934. He was nearly obscured by history, but he's being revived starting about 10 years ago. This is a little excerpt from The Treasure Hunter. It's a complex and ultimately tragic tale. Destruction and greed and desire and social anarchy. The innkeeper's daughter is forced to confront the consequences of her murderous intent. Okay, so there we go. So we're comparing Schrecker, another band composer, with Egon Vellich. He's pictured in the painting on the right, which is actually by Kokoschka, another lover of Alma. So, together with Baron and Webern, Vellich, so his parents were Hungarian, came from Hungarian Jewish families, but when they moved to Vienna, they converted to Christianity. Vellich was raised as a Protestant and converted to Catholicism. He composed operas and ballets, many of them, some of them anyway, with librettos by important literary figures such as Hugo von Hofmannsthal, who was Strauss's librettist and a Jewish writer. Vellich was promoted to professor at the University of Vienna, and he remained in that position until the Anschluss in 1938, when it was no longer safe for him to reside in Austria. He fled to England, and so there's a lot of Vellich I could have chosen, but video, oh, I got this one correct. Yes, okay, so this is, all right, so you'll see how cleverly organized this is now. So this is a Singspiel, actually by Vellich, based on a libretto by Goethe. And it tells the story of Scapin and Scapine, who are cheated out of their inheritance by a greedy doctor, and they exact their revenge and get the money back. Goethe's moral at the end is, thus cheating fails, with cunning, daring with prudence competes. They pull a trick. Scapine, the woman, presents herself to the doctor and says she's sick. He tries to, he gives her medicine, but they do a trick with the medicine, so that then she appears to die. The doctor thinks that he's poisoned her with arsenic because Scapine changed the vials of the medicine, and then they blackmail him and he pays them money that he stole from them, and then she miraculously comes back to life. So this is the same company that did Pierrot. There's the doctor. So we're down to our last slide. Right, this brings us to Kurt Weill, a Jewish composer, his father was a cantor. He studied with Humperdinck, who was Wagner's assistant at Bayreuth. He married twice, married the same woman twice. He married Lotte Lenya. How many of you have ever seen Goldfinger, the movie? Okay, so if you remember in Goldfinger, Rosa Kravitz, who tries to kick Bond with the knives in her little shoes, that's Lotte Lenya. She survived Kurt by many, many years. So Three-Penny Opera was written in 1928, almost at the end of the Weimar period. It was a collaboration with Bertolt Brecht. It opened in Berlin in 1928. Weill fled to New York in 1933. And when he got to New York, he switched style. Instead of writing in the style of Weimar they used in Germany, he switched to an American popular style, where he collaborated with Ira Gershwin and Oscar Hammerstein, and produced such musicals as Lady in the Dark and Knickerbocker Holiday. So first I'm going to play for you a little bit of the Three-Penny Opera, the famous Mac the Knife. So the Three-Penny Opera, of course, is based on a play by John Gay, who lived at the time of Handel. It portrays the tumultuous life of McKeith, an amoral bandit who marries Polly Peachum, the daughter of an unscrupulous entrepreneur. Because the marriage endangers his business, Peachum wants to have Mac hanged.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our glorious dirty ditch of a theatre. In the city's constant turmoil, there is endless slow decay. Mac the Knife grins as he watches, tips his hat and walks away. This is an opera for a city that has gone beyond morality. This is a cheap opera. This is a threepenny opera.
Okay, so the last excerpt I'm going to play for you is Kurt Weill, the Kurt Weill of his American career. So this is a little song from A Lady in the Dark. Liza Elliott is a happy career woman, but she's depressed because she doesn't know what to do with her love life. She seeks psychiatric help, and through analysis she realizes what her problems are. The musical comedy, the musical, is structured into 3 giant dream sequences. Each dream sequence is like a little operetta within the musical. And here's a little bit of Lady in the Dark. I picked it for a reason, as you'll see.
We are gathered here to rejoin, actually, this man and this woman in holy matrimony.
It's never too late to mend the sun. Ding dong, ding dong, dong. Hearts are attorneys and the sun. Where the people, let's ring the bell.
Without the strains of glowing red.
All right. So, Weill wrote that in 1940. That's on the eve of America entering the war in 1941 against the Germans. So I guess it's never too late to mend this one. So, lights please. And thank you all for coming.